Jonathan Davis is an economist and a wealth manager from Hertfordshire. Good morning to you, Jonathan.
Hello, Tim.
Jonathan, you've been listening to a bit of Simon's story. So over a few years, he got into £84,000 of debt, and that wasn't to live a luxurious lifestyle. That was just to make sure he could put food in the cupboard and to pay off household bills. How concerned are you about the numbers of people across Beds, Herts and Bucks that may be currently in a similar situation, perhaps not quite as much money, but a similar situation or on a similar journey to Simon?
Very concerned. I think under the radar there are vast numbers of ordinary folk, households, who are up to their eyeballs in debt, in fact, whether it be mortgage debt or credit card debt or payday loan debt or car debt or overdraft, you name it, and they're only actually keeping their head above the water. And they're able to do that for two reasons just now. It's interesting that the gentleman there who's been very open and honest about these things, must be very difficult to go through these things. Largely his issues were a few years ago when there was, as we know, easy lending. The phrase is, if you could fog a mirror, they'd throw money at you. And all those banks and credit card companies that he talked to, they knew he had a house which had money in it. So they were happy to throw money at him. And then ultimately he did what they expected him to do, which was remortgage. So as he said, he and all those other people who racked up massive amounts of credit card style debt, they just remortgaged. They've still got the debt. The banks have still got their claws into you for the next 10 or 20 years. And because government policy has been to get interest rates low, to the lowest in fact for 300 years, that's the reason why people have still got their head above water, because those up to here in debt can pay the interest on the debt. Well, two issues arise. One, we don't have easy lending anymore. So you can't just walk into a credit card company and say, lend me some money, because very largely they won't. Secondly, it's much more difficult to get mortgages. And thirdly, in the future, at some point, interest rates will rise, and they fell for 30 years. They're going to rise for 15 years, which means that those who are above water just now, I'm afraid to say, unless they do something radical about their debt position, they're going to go below water.
But what can people do? Because if there are people listening now who, just like Simon, couldn't afford the household bills, can't afford to put enough food in their cupboard unless they're using credit cards or using loans, what can people do? Simon wasn't comfortable telling anyone about it. He kept it very quiet. Do you think there is enough provision for people who find themselves on the very edge of a sustainable lifestyle?
No, there's very little provision. There's largely almost voluntary, although it's really council-funded provision at the likes of the Citizens Advice Bureau or the Consumer Credit Counselling Service. So you can go along to these if you're up to here with debt and you don't know how to go forward. You can talk to sympathetic, experienced ears who will in some way be able to help you through and try to manage the process and get you out eventually.
So is the only way forward, Jonathan, really, is to do what Simon did, and that is to kind of consolidate those debts together and work out some kind of reasonable payment plan that you can afford, once you've admitted to the situation you're in?
From a financial point of view, what he did was what hundreds of thousands, indeed, around the country did in the era of easing money up to 2008. They just remortgaged, which reduced the monthly cost of their debt, but it retained the debt, which they will pay off over a very long period of time.
Well, 19 years in Simon's case, yeah.
Absolutely. Well, clearly, if you've got a credit card, it's due short term. If you change that to a mortgage, then it's due over 15, 20, 25 years.
Yes.
You're still paying for it, and you're probably in the long term paying more for it. You should certainly, as the gentleman did, speak to someone you love, someone you trust, someone who cares for you, or if ultimately you don't have someone like that, talk to someone, your GP, your priest, someone who you can just talk to, who might be able to give you some guidance and some hope. From a financial point of view, you have to take the bit by the teeth. You have to say, look, the lifestyle that I have, I may not be living the life of Riley. I may not be going on 5 holidays a year or drive a fast car. But if that lifestyle is more than you can afford, because the only way to continue it is to take on more debt, you must reduce your lifestyle.
Do you think, Jonathan, that Simon is part of what might be thought of as, I don't know, a lost generation, the generation that was able to get all this easy credit and get into these terrible circumstances? Do you think now that the regulations have changed and now that it isn't so easy, that we may see a better future for consumers who may find life tough but will not be able to find themselves in such a huge amount of debt on cards?
You're desperate to get a light at the end of the tunnel.
I am, yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm going to give...
I know you're not a light at the end of the tunnel kind of guy, are you?
Well, if only. I'm going to give the grave reality check here.
Oh, okay.
The reality check is, as I said earlier, we have the lowest interest and mortgage rates in history. I'm not saying they're going to go up tomorrow, but I think it's reasonable to say that they will start rising within a few years. And I'll tell you, once they start rising, they're going to continue rising for many, many years. And on top of that, given the vast amount of debt that we have in society, whether it be households or businesses, or indeed most debt is held by the government, the next generation is going to feel it far, far tougher than the current generation feels it. So tough, I tell you, I'm deadly serious. I think the next generation won't even have, for example, a welfare state, because there'll be so little money in the coffers, there will be no money to pay such things.
Jonathan, thank you for your time. Engaging and slightly frightening, as always. Jonathan Davis, an economist and wealth manager from Hertfordshire. Thank you so much for joining us.